Okay, here we go. Number three. My timer is going to be the OBS, so give myself an extra 20 seconds. Austin, hello, thank you for coming to my talk on physics. I'm going to start with a quote. Only think through the medium of words. Languages are true analytical methods. Algebra, which is adopted to its purpose in every species of expression in the most simple, most exact, and best manner possible, is at the same time a language and an analytical method. The art of reasoning is nothing more than a language well arranged. The impossibility of separating the nomenclature of a science from the science itself is owing to this, that every branch of physical science must consist of three things: the series of facts which are the objects of the science, the ideas which represent these facts, and the words by which these ideas are expressed. Like three impressions of the same seal, the word ought to produce the idea, and the idea ought to be a picture of the fact. And as ideas are preserved and communicated by means of words, it necessarily follows that we cannot improve the language of any science without at the same time improving the science itself. Neither can we, on the other hand, improve a science without improving the language or nomenclature which it belongs to. This is from the preface of the Traité élémentaire de chimie, or Elements of Chemistry, by Antoine Lavoisier, published in 1789. This is where the definition of calorie comes from. This is the world's first book on chemistry, and this is the birth of calories from the first chapter. I'm going to switch it up now and go straight to the conclusions real quick, and then we'll go back to the beginning. So calories are not a valid model of thermodynamics for nutrition. We do have an understanding of thermodynamics. We have the opportunity to advance our field, but we have to be brave because we have to take on physics. We have to learn physics. And so what is physics? It's the study of matter and its constituents, motion, behavior, and energy and force through space and time. Essentially, it's just the study of how nature works. It's just very simply how nature works. It comes from the study of nature, the origin of how things work. So the physics of nutrition is understanding how the food we eat becomes the material for the structure and function of organs, tissues, and cells. And one of those functions is, of course, calories. But in any science and physics subject, it needs accurate, reliable, and valid measurements. The validity of measurement is the most important characteristic. It is a measurement of what we intend to measure and correctly interpreting and applying these results. There are types of validity. I did color code these to make these a little bit easier. The red ones are the ones that I believe I can prove don't agree with calories. The green ones are what they have used to prove calories, and the orange one is criterion, which means it's a standard, and that just has to change by consensus. And so these are the types of validity that I see, like I've gotten to in my research. And so we are really trying to get down to this construct question of, do foods supply the body with energy for muscular work? We know they do, but we're just trying to understand, do calories measure that behavior correctly? So before calories, Lavoisier came up with this idea, like first try to understand heat. He did this with de Laplace. He tried to measure the relationship between respiration and combustion, and Bert the Fil's calorimeter. But he didn't have calorie as a word yet, so he just called it the machine. He thought of the ice sphere experiment. I should probably do this first. Well, this is fine. So the isospheric is a thermometer. Doesn't really measure the heat released from the reaction. It just kind of measures after everything kind of levels out. And so ice, if you measure the ice, how it melts, then so he noticed that ice had this special like insulating and reliable melting properties. So if you were able to surround a reaction in a ball of ice, then you can measure how fast or how much how much heat was released because of how much water would be released, and you could weigh it. And so this is what the original contraption looks like. And he also measured CO2 with secondary absorption. He did respiration on 3 different guinea pigs over 3 different experiments. Third one, I'm not really sure about the time. These are the mathematics behind how he did it. Essentially, he calculated that a guinea pig melts about 13.10 hours, but due to just a change in grains, this one needs to go. But if we just work on this because of standard error, inevitable errors, we could just reduce this by 2.5, and then that comes right into contact with that 10 ounces. So CO2 should melt 10 ounces, and the guinea pig did melt 13, almost 10.5. But if we do 2.5 just because of error, we'll be fine. And so we could do this content validity, the heat exchange given of the oxygen gas by respiration as the principal cause of animal heat. This is not technically, that doesn't need to be there. Respiration is there for combustion, a slow one to be sure, but this is the external validity. Get rid of that construct because that construct validity comes up here. But yeah, so respiration is combustion, a slow one to be sure. The yellow one's what you got to look at. The other ones are just there just in case you want to look at it. So the calories were born after 1789, after 23 years of research. In this book that was translated a year later into English, and this is where he represents the construct. Calories, I don't need to do this. I think I just need to do the external validity, and because that starts to get confusing. Particles are matter. Particles of matter produced by fire, or I should reverse that. Fire produces particles of matter that we can call calories. These calories can bind to particles of body, warming them, or separate from particles of body, cooling them, and they will change the affinity of liquids depending on the atmospheric pressure as well. Calories are considered the repulsive cause, whatever it may be. It didn't really matter anything else. There is the attractive force, the repulsive force, and atmospheric pressure. 3 forces he really talks about. This is the table section from his book where he talks about the old name and how he's trying to remodify it. As you can see, that he really does emphasize that this is matter. Conservation of matter is also credited to Lavoisier. It's later changed to conservation of mass, but this concept actually comes from the idea that if matter could be conserved, that if water expands when being heated, then fire must be adding matter to the water. And so he does define heat in 1783 before the calorie. He talks about how scientists debate if it's a fluid or if scientists debate if it's made of particles. And so even in this time, they really did think, they debated that atoms could be particles. He decided that we're just going to find what works for both of these and not have to choose between either. And as he continued into calories in the 1789, he allowed this to be hypothetical so that way he could investigate it in a mathematical manner. And so these were the findings of his studies, that food is made up of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen. Animals are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. Respiration produces CO2 and needs oxygen and carbon sources, or some kind of food sources, which are mainly made of these ingredients. And then we exhale CO2 just like a candle does. Unfortunately, he died in 1794 by guillotine, but the world moved on. And in the 1800s, we get into this era of transcendental materialism, of like the material world is kind of just like a shadow of another world. If I'm not, I got to really get into transcendental materialism, but I got to get moving too. And part of this background shadow is the idea of it's just all energy, and the entire world is made up this energy. And craft is this idea of energy throughout the universe that is conserved. Arbit's craft is labor force. Your body is also a force and power and movement through this. This concept was really developed by William Helmholtz, I don't know his name, who was a pioneer in physiology, and really pushed that all this energy in the universe could be conserved in this time period. He had this model continues to last to this day. But in the 18th century, here were a list of people who supported his ideas, and here were a list of notable scientists who were critics of these. Joules comes along and discovers like the mechanical law of thermodynamics, and this supposedly dismisses caloric theory from normal physics. But Faraday reattributes this, with his lectures of candle, reattributes the respiration and combustion once again. Von Voigt is trying to understand where the energy from muscles comes from nutrients. He's already discovered protein, carbs, and fats are the building blocks of the carbon, oxygen, hydrogen that Lavoisier found and how we use them as nutrients. He thinks that nitrogen is the way that our body moves. It won't be for another 100 years before we figure out it's ATP. His student, Max Rubner, realized that all these carbon sources, the carbs, proteins, and fats, help animals maintain temperature in a fasted state. So if you become fasted, you lose the energy to maintain body temperature. If you eat any of these carbon sources, you will be able to regain enough energy to maintain temperature. That is the carb sources. And to regain temperature, you need the 494 rule. This is the origin of the 494 rule. And so Atwater is this American at the same time who tasked to try to study this stuff. He comes over to Germany and studies and brings over calories to the American people. They incorporated it into this model, and we developed the Atwater system that is expanded and continues to be used to this day. So this is essentially, it comes down to this is how calories are thought of. And these men still knew that they did not know enough to understand where the energy is coming from for these sources. They didn't truly understand, but this model worked in at least some kind of mathematical process, same way it worked for Lavoisier. So we are just on the birth of atomic theory. So even though Lavoisier is saying scientists are debating, it was not fully decided until after the 1900s. Ludwig Boltzmann preached atomism his whole life, died in 1906, and he founded literally statistical mechanics. If you don't know, statistical mechanics is modern day thermodynamics, and it was not founded before the invention of the calorie, or was founded after the. People criticize Boltzmann, including Planck, founder of quantum mechanics. Planck used Boltzmann's theories to birth quantum mechanics. And so 1900 is the official start of the understanding of what happens in atoms and how the electrons and everything move. The modern classification of calories is the combustion of, is a delayed combustion response. And here are the sources from that. And oxidation, I think the big problem with this is that oxidation has two different definitions, and this needs to change, and leave oxygen to just be binding with binding. So what we've understood since 1900, and at the same time, I guess I should do the electron right here as well, just to draw that connection at the same time. Electron and then thermodynamics. And then we get into, this is the development of quantum mechanics since the 1900s. This picture is from Sean Carroll, not Sean Connell. And these are the associated dates that go with these discoveries. And you can notice that these are all well beyond the association of calories and nutrition. What we've been able to discover with these modern advances in physics since the 1900s is things like MRI, electron microscopes, and the tools that we need to discover the actual biological processes and how to take pictures of them, including this paper from 2017 on the actual mechanics of ATP use during and all the lever action of the myosin cell. So what does this mean? The energy from nutrition comes with trying to do this updated modern standard. Energy from nutrition comes from the electrons. It comes from the fundamental forces of the electron force. And so I'm going to check my time here. I'm 13 minutes in. I'm way over the time. And so got to cut off 5 minutes. I got to cut out a lot of Lavoisier. But that's essentially it. And then we can start to understand where this stuff comes from. We can solve problems like fat loss. And I guess this is just going to be mostly just a short talk. I don't have to put all my notes out here. but it's good for the video, for this recording, for this practice. I'm going to definitely shorten this up, and it's going to be much more of a presentation than it is going to be a PowerPoint lecture. Maybe I skip that starting quote and just go. Yeah, I'm going to skip this one by Abby. Just do this. Get into it. That probably saves a minute. All right, that's probably going to be the end of this recording because I'm just going to probably be doing it. But it's part. Good try.